Hello everyone, welcome back to this unit.
Hi.
And so for this unit we're talking about charitable foundations. And Keith, I wondered, have you ever joined any volunteer work or charity activities?
Well, yes, I have, albeit many, many years ago when I was just after being a student, around about 1995. One of my friends became very successful in the insurance company business, and he was always interested in charities and looking after the Salvation Army and the World Wildlife Fund in England. But his company grew and grew, and eventually one of the big players in the insurance company came to him and said, "We'd like to buy your company for several million, several hundred million really," and which allowed him to become a philanthropist. So he could work on the things and the areas that really meant something to him. And he set up a Ugandan or an orphanage for war victim children in Uganda. There is a large problem there with unexploded landmines, and many of the children have an arm missing or a leg, or maybe their parents have been killed. And so he went over there by himself. He bought some land from a local tribe and the materials in which to build an orphanage. And of course, when you build an orphanage like that and you offer shelter to 30 or 40 small children, 30 or 40 very quickly became 300 or 400. And so he reached out to his friends, such as myself and some others, to see if we could go over and help. Now, the land that he bought was actually, it had a large lake in the middle of it, which at first we thought, well, it's good for water. But in actual fact, we couldn't drink this water. It was poisonous because it was covered in an algae, a brown algae that would not go away. But what we subsequently found, when we tested the algae to see if it was poisonous, it turned out it was very good for biofuels. And so one of my other colleagues who works for Shell, the oil company in the Netherlands, he took some samples to his people, and they were very interested to set up a biofuel plant to produce petroleum from this algae. And algae grows very, very fast. So this has become a huge success around the back of the orphanage. And consequently, they now have enough money coming in, now that yours truly did the rolling 5-year contract. They now have enough money coming in to expand to about 600 orphans. And they've also expanded into finding foster parents, both in Uganda and in other countries too. Sometimes a child that's disabled through injury from a landmine finds it very, very difficult to survive, not just in Africa, but in any country. And this has taken a lot of time to set up and organize. So, but that's 1995. Since then, I've been working in different parts of the world, not with charitable locations, but in education, because I think it's in education that we can teach people how to be kind to each other and not allow people to be left behind. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest experience in the field of volunteering.
That sounds very impressive, very impressive. So you have some international volunteer experience when you were still a young person. I mean, here at Asian University, we'll also encourage our students to do volunteer jobs either locally or internationally. And so far we've been done quite a lot of works involving our students in some helping works in Southeast Asia or in Africa, and that part has been going quite well. And some of my students participated, and every time when they come back, the feeling of fulfillment is very difficult for them to describe, but most of them would say definitely they would like to try it again. So I think that you must have the same feelings when you were young.
Yeah, it leaves you with a feeling of fulfillment. Unlike anything else, you can demonstrate to yourself that you've done something good, something that you can be proud of. And I know several teachers that are my friends, and each summer they go away to different places. And when I talk to them about it, they say it fulfills two needs for them. One, they go away to places like Nepal that recently had a large earthquake, and they can help rebuild the cities that were destroyed. They can teach over there, excuse me, for which they don't get paid. They just get accommodation and some food for their services. But while they're there, they can look at the different areas, the culture, and so it fulfills their need and desire to want to travel, whilst at the same time fulfilling the local people's needs to become better educated. The international language of the world is still English, and yet such a large percentage of the population, the global population, don't speak English. And so teaching them that little extra will help immensely. But we also teach skills such as bridge building, making wells, and solar power has become probably the largest expanding industry in Africa, because the country is so big. It's not like Taiwan, where we have electricity cables going everywhere. In Africa, you might be 200 or 300 miles from the nearest power station. Solar power has allowed telephones to be installed anywhere and everywhere. And so the communication network that is set up from charitable locations and charitable donations has allowed them to become more educated.
Yes, back to the point about education, technology definitely helped to break the barriers. Like before, if you would like to study at Harvard, MIT, or Oxford, it's going to cost you a lot of money in order to enter those high-profile schools. But like right now, they have classes online. If you have internet connections, you will be able to access their courses. And I think that would definitely also help people with less privileged background to help themselves get educated and, to change their lives eventually.
Absolutely. The expansion of education through the internet is probably the largest and most influential area of education that's ever been, where now most of the population have some access at least to education.
All right, I think that's about the first part. Thank you for sharing your personal experience of your volunteer works. So we'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. And so a question. When we were talking about the Ugandan orphanage, how many orphans did the orphanage open with to take care of? And how many orphans were mentioned at the end of the talk?
All right, so from Keith's personal experience about his volunteer job in Uganda, what kind of fossil fuel did the technology replace?